I'd now like to hand over to Mark Monmonier, who will be a familiar name to many of us. Mark has had a glittering career in the world of mapping. He's only recently retired as an academic. He's the author of 20 books and numerous papers. The most recent of his works, which I'll read in full, Fog and Compass, How John Byron Plato Gave Farmers a Real Address, will be released in March 2022 by the University of Iowa Press. Mark's also the inventor of the research tool now known as the Monmonier algorithm. He enjoys writing for a general audience, and really the access book for many of us will have been How to Lie with Maps, my favorite title of the last few decades for a map book. So can I hand over now, please, to Mark Monmonier?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Good evening, morning, or afternoon, depending on where you are. John Byron Plato's clock system farm map. Next, I guess, to get to the good. John Byron Plato's clock system farm map of Genesee County, New York, exemplifies an innovative patented wayfinding system devised in early 20th century America to give farmers a real address different from the rural free delivery address used by the post office for delivering mail. Focused narrowly on routes designed for letter carriers, the RFD system failed the rural traveler eager to enjoy the socioeconomic benefits of the motor vehicle. Next, please. This is the map that I bought on eBay for a mere $13.94, including tax and shipping, while completing a biography of Plato and his efforts to combat rural isolation. The map is centered within a frame of advertisements, and the overall image measures 54 by 40 centimeters. Because clock system maps are rare in libraries and institutional map collections, I consider my purchase a fortuitous find. Next, please. My map was probably derived from an ad-free version insofar as an enlarged view of several of the edges show where a map with a broader geographic scope had been truncated to accommodate the advertisements, all printed in color. By contrast, all the map's lines and lettering are in black. Next, please. The name clock system reflects an addressing scheme that relates each farm to a locally noteworthy business center or village. Each of these centers anchored a local framework of spokes and rings. 12 evenly spaced spokes define 12 sectors numbered 1 through 12, like the hours of a clock face. And an overlay of concentric rings a mile apart divides the surrounding trade area, or district, into what Plato called blocks. Within each block, a unique letter identifies a particular farm or rural residence. This example shows a block just beyond the 1 mile circle in the 11 o'clock sector around a village named Alton. A farmstead identified by the letter N would have the address 111 N Alton. Next, please. A booklet called A Rural Index listed these addresses alphabetically by the farmer's last name. The typical rural index was 12 inches tall, 9 inches wide, and a pocket at the back held a folded copy of the clock system map. Some of the early rural indexes covered only 1 or 2 townships. This slide shows the cover of Plato's first New York directory, published in 1919 for Ulysses Township, northwest of Ithaca, in the central part of the state. Display ads scattered throughout the directory underscored the importance of advertising to Plato's business model. Each farmer in the county received a free copy, which made the publication attractive to businesses eager to sell milking machines, animal feed, tractors, and other agricultural products. Next, please. Note that several ads in the frame pointedly link the map and its rural index to a specific firm. Next, please. Between 1919 and 1929, Plato published rural directories for 8 individual townships or pairs of townships, and for 15 whole counties in New York. Like many small businesses, his index map company was undermined by the Great Depression. Although the Ithaca firm lasted until 1931, as early as 1930, Plato had been working a few hundred miles to the west-southwest over in Ohio, where he published at least 4 county maps. As this slide shows, one of his Ohio maps, issued in 1932, employed a second ink red. As this example suggests, Plato continued to innovate with marketing strategies and graphic design. Next, please. My Genesee County clock system map, issued in Plato's 11th year in Ithaca, reflects a new approach to labeling farmsteads. Instead of seemingly random letters merely unique within each block, his Genesee map introduced 2-part house labels consisting of a letter and a number. As shown here, the letter now identifies a particular thoroughfare extending across multiple blocks, and the integer that follows represents the farmstead's relative location along that route. Next, please. Here is a close-up of one village center at the bottom of the map, with a 7-sector district extending 5 rings outward to a dotted line trade area boundary. Close to the hub, a dark pattern of diagonal lines marks the built-up area within which individual residences are not identified. Next, please. Within Genesee County, 6 central places provided distinct addressing hubs radiating spokes and surrounded by concentric rings. Shaded built-up areas mark about 3 times as many additional places that are not hubs. Next, please. In 1936, an Ithaca-based firm began publishing so-called compass system maps with only 8 sectors based on the subcardinal compass directions. Within half a decade, this new firm mapped more than twice as many counties as Plato had mapped in a dozen years. More importantly, this restarted endeavor validated the premise that direction and distance addressing was useful in the era before house numbering and ubiquitous signs with street names. Next, please. Clock and Compass, slated for release in April, I thought it was March, but you know how publishers are, narrates the life story of a clever innovator whose career included patenting not only the clock system, but an ingenious parking brake for horse-drawn delivery vehicles. Educated at a pioneering manual arts high school in Denver, Plato served in the Army during the Spanish-American War and worked at various times as a draftsman, a dealer in veneers, the manufacturer of his patented horse hitch, a school teacher, a lumber yard manager, and a livestock farmer. When the Depression devastated his map publishing business, he went to Washington to advise the government on farm classification and rural wayfinding. His final decades were spent developing a day camp for local Girl Scouts. Next, please. That's a blank slide. I have a few other images if anybody is interested. Oh, well, I guess time advanced that one. Let me be my own shill. And maybe there was a question perhaps about rural free delivery maps. This is one of the first ones available from the Library of Congress, 1911. And next, please. Here I have highlighted on that map the route outward from the post office at Kemar, the route to be followed by a letter carrier who would visit individual farms. This kind of map was not good for people who just wanted to find a farmer, because not all farmers were named, but they were sold to the public, and they were bought on number by the Fuller Brush Company, which had traveling salespeople who would go door to door selling brushes. Any questions? Other ones?
There is one question, and we just have time to slide it in. Could you share it with us, Katie? Oh, I can see it. Did Plato ever approach USPS about incorporating his system of addressing in rural areas?
Yes, he did. In fact, after he got his patent, one of the first things he did was to go to Washington, He bought his own ticket. He was there for about a week. He tried to interest the post office in the scheme. I guess he had hoped maybe to license it to them. And basically, they suggest that, well, the best way of handling this would be for it to be developed by an independent business, which he did. Um, I learned a lot about Plato. I might just ramble on a little bit more. He didn't leave any business records, but he did talk to news reporters quite a bit. And newspaper databases were one of the principal sources of information, as were various genealogical tools. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. We actually do have another question. And by the way, I should be thanking Andrew Capachunas, who asked that question.
Oh,
we do have a question from Stephen Nagler, but we are going to save that to the end, if you don't mind, folks, so that we stay on time. We're going to have a 10-minute break now, so that we can recommence at 7. And it will be Katie Parker who will be starting us off again.